welcome to Lutherans Alive. My name is Gregory Held, and this is the program that brings you the story of Lutheran Christians and their ministries in southwestern Pennsylvania. With us today is Melissa Stobert. Melissa is a social worker at St. John's Home in Mars. Melissa, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you here with us. Thanks so much for taking the time to come in and to share with us a little bit the life of a social worker, and to talk specifically today a bit about Alzheimer's. I guess we've been hearing more and more about Alzheimer's over the last decades, and it in some ways might begin to sound like a household word, but we know that there's a lot about it that people don't understand. So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Sure, anytime.
We understand as well that you're a member of St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Sarver.
That's right.
And that you and your husband attend worship there. And along the way, we hope to talk a little bit about how your faith informs your life and your work. But maybe just to help us get a little bit better acquainted with you as we begin, can you tell us a little bit about what kind of preparation and education a social worker has to prepare for, and then what kind of a job description might be for a social worker?
To be a social worker, being a people person is very important, because that's what we're doing each and every day. We're working with families, we're working with patients or residents, whether it be in a nursing home or in a hospital setting, sometimes children as well. As far as education, typically you're looking at 4 to 6 years. Those of us at St. John do have a 6-year higher education degree. Most of the social workers that you'll run into will, of course, have a master's degree in social work. So, but I really liked the idea of working one-on-one with families and helping them through the difficult situations that they might encounter with their elderly loved ones. Mm-hmm. So as a social worker, especially in long-term care setting, what we're looking at is, again, working with families, working with their loved ones, during something that is probably one of the most difficult times in their lives, as far as looking at placing someone that you love in a nursing home, helping them adjust to that idea and cope with that idea. And then for the resident, going through something that is so significant of a loss, they're giving up so much of their independence to ultimately reside for the rest of their lives, most often in a long-term care setting. So as far as social and emotional well-being for residents and their families, it's very important for them to have someone like a social worker or a counselor to be able to go to express their emotions, to raise their concerns, and to receive some education. Some of the other things that you're looking at when you are entering into a nursing home are many financial issues. It's an extreme expense for families and the resident being placed in the long-term care setting. And there's many insurance questions. What insurances cover nursing home care? What is medical assistance? And certainly that's a huge role that the social worker plays as well, is helping families understand those issues.
So your goal or your responsibility is to understand and be able to relate to the specific situations of the individuals, but also to understand that very large system of services and healthcare and medicine and all those things that relate to the person along the way.
Exactly.
Our hope today is to take a specific illness like Alzheimer's and to kind of walk through that scenario from the onset of symptoms, if you will, and all the things that might come into play and need to fall into place as a person then comes to that realization and begins to live into those circumstances. So let's go ahead and jump right in at the beginning. What are the kinds of symptoms or telltale signs that a person or a family might begin to see in a person where Alzheimer's begins to take hold?
Alzheimer's is a very scary term, and I think there's a lot of joking that goes around with it when someone forgets something or misplaces something. Oh my gosh, do I have Alzheimer's disease? And a lot of people also think that Alzheimer's is a natural part of aging, and it's not. Not everyone that reaches their 70s and 80s acquires a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. So I think that if someone is concerned about the possibility of an Alzheimer's diagnosis, what they might be seeing would be a variety of symptoms. Most importantly, and probably the most prominent symptom, as we're all aware of, is the memory loss.
And that's an interesting one because as we all get older, memory does tend to diminish a bit. And I'm sure, as you say, sometimes the tendency would be to jump right to that
Right.
conclusion. And it very well may be, but then again, it might not be.
Sometimes what I use as an example of normal forgetfulness would be if you forget where you placed your car keys. Something that may not be normal would be forgetting what the car keys are used for. So that's a kind of a simple way to distinguish what might be normal forgetfulness that you and I experience each and every day versus something that's not quite normal. So memory loss is certainly at the top of the list of symptoms that you would see. Other things would be difficulty interacting in a social situation. A lot of times you'll start to see your loved one withdrawing from social situations, having difficulty engaging in conversation, maybe repeating words or phrases, possibly starting a discussion or a conversation, stopping, and then not being able to pick up where you left off again. Some of the other things would be misplacing of objects. We did talk about that.
Yes.
But again, not being able to find them, not being able to retrace your steps to try to find the missing item. Some of the other things would be, as far as symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, might be difficulty naming objects. You see something and you know what it is, but they're not able to, express the right label for that object. Sometimes you see some difficulty with vision, whether it's color recognition or spatial issues. You may also see poor judgment. Someone who, you always knew to have good judgment, now you're starting to question some of the decisions that they're making. Also, even in an environment that is usually very simple and very routine, you might see them having a little bit of difficulty in that environment. Possibly not being able to follow a recipe that they've utilized for years and years. Not being able to manage your checkbook, having difficulty doing simple mental math, or possibly even difficulty playing a game. A lot of our elderly folks are big card players, and they've played cards years and years, and now all of a sudden they're having difficulty remembering the rules of a game.
Some of the basic things that come as second nature to them otherwise.
Right, exactly.
These are all very, I think, interesting but clear indicators, as you say. What's behind these kind of changes that take place in a person? It's a chemical imbalance or a deterioration of the functioning in the brain?
Diagnosing Alzheimer's disease is very difficult. It's easy to recognize the symptoms that we discussed, but specifically diagnosing Alzheimer's is very difficult, and it's more of a rule-out diagnosis. So a lot of times what the physicians are doing are ruling out other diagnoses, ruling out maybe a delirium or ruling out a stroke or ruling out a side effect from a medication. And then once those diagnoses are ruled out and maybe CT scans are done or an MRI to take a look at what's going on in the brain, then they can maybe more clearly, although not definitively, give the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease.
And that might be one of the reasons why there's that bit of mystery about it in terms of diagnosing and understanding what's happening.
As far as official diagnosis, it can't be actually confirmed until someone passes away and an autopsy is performed. Certainly, physicians have become very skilled in giving that diagnosis through the rule-out process, and in other ways they're able to to look at the disease. But as far as a definitive diagnosis, not while someone is still living, unfortunately.
We're at the point where we need to take a break, but when we come back, let's go ahead and talk about becoming a part of the system, getting connected with where we can find help and dealing with some of these early issues.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back.